Hey everybody, I'm Tammy, I'm the Siberian Wind, and welcome to the first live where we are working on temperature rings. So I see I've got Andrea and Jess, Chloe, and a new Lydia. Welcome in, all of you, welcome in. Bear with me just a moment, I'm going to grab my microphone. I realize that it is across the room and I don't feel like yelling all day. So bear with me just a moment. My room has kind of been set up for a couple of other projects and isn't quite where it needs to be. Welcome in, Joyce. Welcome in, Pam. Welcome, welcome. Good morning. Well, good afternoon, depending on where you're from. Good morning or afternoon, whichever one it is. So, temperature rings. For those who are new to my channel, temperature rings is a pattern that I wrote. Now, with that being said, Joyce says not sewing today. No worries. No worries. With that being said, because I did write it, there is always the possibility that there might be a hiccup or a problem or something like that. So if during the process of working on temperature rings, there's any kind of hiccup or goof or something like that that needs to be addressed, if I need to issue out a whole new pattern, I'll do that. If I need to issue out just a page or two, I'll do that. If it's just something that you can fix yourselves and maybe in future versions I update it, then that's what I'll do. So I do offer full support. For those of you who have already tried to download off of my Patreon site where the link takes you, if you run into problems, you already know I'm willing and able to help with whatever problems you run into. So please do not ever panic and think you are stuck or think you've got other problems. I've got a help ticket out to Patreon because I've been having problems with the downloads not working. So just email me. I am more than happy to fix it. I'm more than happy to get you the pattern. And I'm working on the backside to fix it. So I don't want anybody to ever worry when you are buying a pattern from me. I want you to be able to relax and enjoy the process. That is my whole goal, is I want you to relax and enjoy the process of making a quilt. And I had a dream. We're going to have the I have a dream chat. I had a dream. I wanted to do a temperature quilt. I've wanted to do one for I don't know how long, and it's always kind of been on the back burner for me because I didn't like any of the designs that's out there, and I couldn't fall in love with them. I was looking at them. I know I was just over on Stephanie Harris's page, and I didn't get a chance to like ask her where the pattern came from because I was doing other things as well. I was quilting while she was sewing the last rows of her temperature quilt onto to make the top, make the full quilt top. And my first thought when I saw it is that's definitely a temperature quilt, but that's not one I want to make. So it's not that there's anything wrong with temperature quilts that are out there already, but I wasn't in love with them. And I've had a double wedding ring die from AccuQuilt for years, and so I wanted to put it to good use. So the pattern does allow you to use an AccuQuilt to cut your pieces. Your sewing pieces are not using AccuQuilt. So I know that you guys that have heard me about this before, I've probably gone over a lot of this, but I definitely want to go over it for everybody who is new so that I'm not leaving anyone out. So I do see people coming into the chat. I will say hi in just a minute. Don't worry. Please don't panic. It is not, I'm not ignoring you guys. So the temperature ring quilt that you're seeing, or the temperature rings quilt that you're seeing behind me is the cover image. This quilt was done starting in August. So it was not started at January 1. So you have the ability to do that. You have the ability to start whenever you want. So if you want to make it about somebody's birthday, you want to make it about somebody's wedding, you want to make it about some big event, in someone's life and you're making this as a gift for them, you absolutely can do that. You do not have to start in January 1st. And that was one problem that I saw with a lot of the temperature quilt patterns I saw on the market, is that they all start January 1st and then December 31st. So it doesn't give you that flexibility to plan for a special quilt. And when you're doing something as detailed as a temperature quilt, when you're doing something as detailed as a double wedding ring quilt, if you're going to put the time in to work on a double wedding ring, then you probably want to be able to enjoy it. I know I do. I still have to get this one quilted, but I know I want to enjoy it. So the quilt you're going to see me working on this year in 2025, I'm going to be using 2024 data. So I want to chronicle my first full calendar year in Casper, Wyoming, by doing a temperature quilt for my first full calendar year. Now, I could have started this back in May of 2023 when my husband and I signed our lease for the apartment we're in and moved in. I mean, I could go back to May and start it in May. But I really wanted this to just be a first calendar year, because you don't go through all the seasons in Wyoming until you've gone through a full calendar year. So I wanted it to be a calendar year quilt for me this time. So you can do it that way. You can do it calendar year. The quilt you're seeing behind me is 4 variables. So when you are getting your quilt, and I don't know how far some of you have gotten, so if I'm going over things that you've already done, absolutely put it in the chat. That is perfectly fine. If you've got questions, put it in the chat. I am here to help. We are going to get to some sewing today, so please don't panic. We are getting to the machine. You guys are not going to see my machine. Like, you're not going to be looking over my machine. You'll be looking over my ironing station. But I am going to show you what's going to go on. Jess says that she's lurking and taking notes on her workbook. Awesome. That is exactly what I expect. And welcome in, Katie, Greenland Quilter. Welcome. Good morning. Let's see. Pam said that she'll be lurking. She needs to tidy your sewing space. Lynn was talking about wedding ring quilt for February, so I mentioned you designed. Yes, she was mentioning that. And I just happened to sign off right as she was mentioning that and going, I should have stayed, but I needed to get ready. Andrea bought her pattern early this morning, printed the entire 60-some pages during Sean's live this morning. Yep, 63 pages. Oh no. Andrea says that she thinks she's coming down with that internet bug that's going around. She's been sneezing, coughing, and hacking for a couple of days, and now her brain hurts. Oh my gosh. Lydia said, new to this channel, but still want to make a temperature quilt. Thank you so much for Lydia for coming by. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, guys, please do not hesitate to put them in the chat. Let's see. Andrea said that she wanted to do a double wedding ring quilt and a temperature quilt for a long time. Tammy has a fantastic pattern here, so I hope to knock 2 things off my bucket list this year. Yes, absolutely. Jess was saying that she felt the same way about doing both the temperature quilt and a double wedding ring at the same time. She says she'll be a master by the end. Yes, absolutely. And that's kind of what the deal is. Jessa she said she needs to print hers on foundation paper, piecing paper. Absolutely. Chloe says that she's not started yet. She wants to learn more. Perfect. And Andrea said, I got as far as deciding on my fabric. I need to make my templates. I'm doing this calendar year. Okay. So let me backtrack then. Okay, so let's go back because a lot of you guys are definitely at the beginning stages. So let me go over things. If you have already purchased the pattern, pull it out. Pull it out and let's go through it, because there's so much in here and it was really hard. No, I did not, Joyce. I do need to look that up. Thank you for reminding me. Let me make a note. I do have spare stabilizer and that's what it's going on. Okay. So I will look up those templates and see which sizes you need. Welcome in, Laura. She says, hi, team and everyone. Welcome, welcome. Good morning to you, or good afternoon, or whatever time it is for you. Okay. So Andrea had a good point when she emailed me this morning. I printed mine and put it in a binder. The only page I printed in color was my cover sheet. So that way I can look at the cover sheet, I can see how pretty it is, and I can be re-inspired every time I see it. And then everything else I put in sheet protectors. So I know you can't really see them on camera, but these are sheet protectors. I did not punch holes. Andrea said that she said, I need to know by Wednesday. Okay, absolutely, Joyce. That is the first thing I will be doing when I get off of here. That is the only thing I will be doing when I get off of here. Let's see, you decided on using calico and gingham and unbleached muslin to give it a vintage vibe, I think. Yes, absolutely. Calico will definitely do that. And that unbleached muslin is what is in this quilt right here. That is unbleached muslin as the background. All right, so I know that there's not page numbers, so I do have a note when I do future versions, so I do apologize to anyone who already has the pattern. Your table of contents gives you a listing of what's included in your pattern, but there's no page numbers. So there's page numbers on the table of contents, but there's no page numbers in the book. So I do apologize for that. That is one thing that I will adjust. It is going to make it a longer pattern, so I do apologize for that. I can't fix that. There's just no way to shove it all in. I've tried. I actually put my supply list on the back of my binder so that I would be able to see it, because I knew I'm going to be answering those questions. You don't have to do that. You can keep your supply list wherever you need it. That's perfectly fine as well. All right, so on the supply list, I'm going to go over that real quick. You need an AccuQuilt Go or Go Big with the die number 55078. Or you can use template plastic and a permanent pin, and the template's included in the pattern. So you do not have to buy necessarily anything else. You can do it with what you have. I recommend template plastic because you're going to be cutting on this all year long, and you want to be able to reuse that template all year long and have it accurate all year long. Let's see, Chloe says she got caught making a blanket for her daughter's stuffed animal this morning. Pulled out my slice fabric cutter for cutting out letters. I will grab my pattern. Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, so the add a quarter ruler that is listed, it says or add a quarter plus in either 6 or 12 inch length. This is the 12-inch length ruler that I have, and it is pink, so I do apologize. It's hard to see on camera. An add a quarter ruler has a lip on the back side, on the slick side of the ruler, that allows you to put this up against your fabric and your paper and prevents you from cutting into your seam allowance. So you put this ledge up against your paper and you trim on the edge against it. The add a quarter plus has one advantage. It also has a bezel or a beveled edge, so that when you go to fold your paper, that way you're not folding it over this big hump of a piece of ruler. You're folding it over a very slim profile. So one thing that I recommend, and this is something that I learned the hard way because nobody told me. So when you go to flip your ruler over to use that beveled edge, go ahead and just flip your ruler so the shiny side is up. There is no need for you to sit there and hold your ruler at an angle to try to get that bevel all the way down to where you need it. Just flip the ruler over and that you can just lay your ruler flat and that bevel is all the way up against your paper. Okay, so that's one thing that you'll need. If you decide to do your letters for your months the way that I've done them in the sample quilt, that is paper piecing. Those letters are really tiny. I recommend an add an eighth ruler. By the time that you get done using an add a quarter, you're going to have 4 to 6 layers of fabric in a seam allowance because you're going to have too much layering. So you want the add an eighth ruler. I have mine in a 6-inch. You do not need a 12-inch for this pattern, okay? 12-inch is all I could get when I went to go get my add a quarter plus. I have a 6-inch add a quarter, and now I have a 12-inch add a quarter plus. So if you can get an add a quarter plus and a 6-inch, that will be plenty. You do not need it larger, okay? So especially if you're shipping and you're worried about it breaking and shipping, go with the 6-inch. Oh yes, Chloe, she says 6-inch add a quarter plus is long enough. Yes, it absolutely is. You do not need the 12-inch. This was just what my quilt shop had, so I kind of got stuck with a longer ruler. I mean, I'll use it on other projects, but and I'm actually going to pull it out. Let's see. There we go. Oh, I've got my sewing templates printed out, you guys, so that way we can sew today. Because I want to show you guys what it looks like to sew on this. Okay, so your sewing template, you know what? Let me bring you guys over so you can see my space here. So this is the sewing template, and if you can see your lines, your longest line, you only need like 5 inches. So you do not need a 12-inch ruler, okay? So if you have one, that's fine, but you don't need the 12-inch. So it's up to you as to what you buy, what suits you better. Now, if you do not want to buy, if you are not a gadget girl, if you're not a gadget quilter, you do not have to buy an add a quarter ruler, okay? You can do this entire pattern with template plastic. You could actually use paper, but I recommend template plastic to save a few trees, and a regular quilting ruler with a 1/4-inch marking. You absolutely could do this entire thing that way, but this makes it easier, okay? That's why it is on the recommended supplies. Now, the Ziploc bags, I said 48-gallon size for your months, and between 10 to 36 for your strips. Okay, so what that's going to look like is I've got a stack of Ziploc bags. Okay, these are my month bags. What I have done is I have marked them with the numbers for the centers that they go with. Now, my centers are all going to be the same color. You do have a color sheet or a layout sheet in your pattern. If you want to take and make multiple copies of that, color to your heart's content, see what looks good to you, then absolutely do that. One idea that I've toyed around with is, instead of doing month markers as the only markings, is taking the little peels that go between the month markers. So like this is January on this quilt. I would change this, and this peel to a different color. So you could always change them to a different color if you wanted to. You can change the backgrounds, the insides, to whatever color you want. Color it to your heart's content. I want you to be happy with your quilt because you're putting in a year's worth of work into this quilt. Whether it takes you a year, or whether it takes you 2 years, or whether it takes you 6 months because it's historical data, whatever you're doing is a year's worth of information. So don't sell yourself short. Take your time with it. Don't rush yourself. Andrea says Dollar Tree sells disposable cutting boards and they make fantastic templates. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And you absolutely can use those. You do not need to trace any of your templates to get started. Okay, so that is not what you need day one. So, I was showing you my month bags. I just literally in the last day got done cutting all of my centers. So I'm using a solid black for my center. I am not done yet cutting all of my peels. So, it's up to you. You don't have to have these to get started, okay? So your fabric requirements will change depending on what you want. So if you want all of your month fabrics to be the same color, then you'll need all of that in one fabric. If you are doing different fabrics, you need a 10-inch square for every center you want to do. And you need a 7 by 3 inch rectangle for every peel that you want to do in whatever color. So you can make this as scrappy as you want. So my little month, this is month 38 or M38 piece. So that is going into this bag. And I have not even looked to see if that's a month I want to deal with right now, but that's what's going into this bag. And these are just going to go back in my stash. Or I've got a little basket, you guys. This is a Dollar Tree basket, I believe. That's what all of this is going into. So the 48, you need 48 of those gallon size bags. Whatever brand you want to get. Mine are Walmart brand, great value. You can get Dollar Tree. You're not going to handle them as much as you think. Those you're not going to handle. Your strip bags you're going to handle a lot. So if you're going to invest in any higher priced bags, like these are freezer bags with the zipper, which is easier for me to manipulate. I have a hard time sometimes with the zippers that you pull open and then have to press to close. Like I sometimes struggle. Like I will end up throwing them back in the basket without actually closing them. So the zipper makes it easier for me to close. So that's important to me. And I'm going to be handling this bag all year long. So the number of these you need is going to be determined by how many variables you're going to use and how many values you're going to use. So those are the two V words we're going to be talking about. Let me go back to the list. The minimum supplies, your selected product for paper piecing, whether that's printer paper, foundation paper. Jessica was talking about foundation paper piecing. Welcome in, Terry. Whether you're using fabric, you can use fabric, you guys. So if you've got, this is unbleached muslin that's behind me, that is my centers. You can absolutely use that. If you've got extra, I would use non-fusible stabilizer, like a non-fusible interfacing. You can absolutely use that. If you want to scrap this as much as you can and use up, random supplies, especially if you guys are doing, like Just Get It Done quilts. I know her name. I can't think of it. But the lady over at Just Get It Done Quilts does a yearly declutter challenge. So if you're doing her declutter challenge, you may have come across things that you can get rid of. And if you haven't already thrown them out, if you want to use them as stabilizers, use them. Your pieces just need to be big enough to make one of your sewing template. So there are two sewing guides. There's a sewing guide G and a sewing guide K. So for my quilts, because I'm going to do 4 variables again, like I did that on this one. Karen Brown, yes, Chloe, yes, exactly what I was thinking of. Because I'm doing 4 variables and I'm not going to stretch my arcs, this is going to be the only template I need. So I will not need sewing guide K. Sewing guide K is going to be for those who are doing 2 variables, or if you are going to stretch your arcs. So what a stretched arc is, let me find one. Here we go. Okay, so in the majority of this quilt, you are going to have 8 fabrics. So 8 fabric pieces. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in this one arc here. However, right here, I only have 4. So I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't know how well that's showing up on camera. You guys can let me know. But a stretched arc, so the initial arcs are going to be going to point away from your centers. And then in these stretched arcs, they point towards your centers. Okay? So that is the key difference between the two. So if you're looking for a specific kind of aesthetic, that can also be something that you consider when you're making your decisions for how many fabrics. Now, one question that I did get early on is, well, I think I'm just going to do 2 variables because I think it'll be simpler. And I said, that's fine. Just make sure you have plenty of fabric. And she looked at me, and I saw the wheels turning. So that's one of the key differences, you guys. So if you are doing a 2 variable quilt, you can do 5, 7, or 9 for your values. So you can do a range of fabrics for your values, but you'll need more fabric for each of those. So 2.5 yards per fabric, because you're cutting bigger pieces of fabric. So if you don't want to piece them together, if you don't want, waste, or, you might run out, it's possible. So if you are using smaller cuts of fabric, all of my cuts for mine are 1 yard cuts. So we are going to get through an entire year on 1 yard cuts using a 4 variable, 7 value setup. If you are using 9 values, you may still need 1 yard of each. If you're doing 5, you may possibly need a little bit more, like 1.25 yards, because you're going to be using more of that fabric to fill in more spots. Okay? Let me know if you guys have questions. Okay? Let's see. I'm looking right now to see if there was anything else. So setting squares, you guys, in the sample, what I did is when I did a month, letters like you see in January is in blue up here, December up here is in brown. I did those based off of seasons, so technically we start winter at the end of December, so the majority of December is still technically fall. So that's why December is brown and January is blue, because January is fully in the winter solstice time frame. So all 4 of those were the same color. So all of January is the same color. All of December is the same color. All of my others are mix match. They're, it's all 4 different colors. So I put them all together in each of those settings. And that can be a little overwhelming, so please use your layout sheet to color them in. You are going to thank me later, okay? So please, if you're going to do a layout like that where you're doing the 4 different ones, please use your layout sheet, color them in, and we'll work through where they go as we get through this quilt, okay? I do not want you to panic about that. You can do it. Now, in this quilt that I'm going to do in 2025, I'm going to use 1 fabric for all of them. All of my setting squares are going to be the same fabric, which means that all of these junctures, oh, you're fine, Joyce, you're fine. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, guys. I am willing and able to answer questions. So I would love to answer questions if you guys have them. So yeah, absolutely. So all of my setting squares in my 2025 are going to be this purple fabric. Okay, so I have all of these cut out. I just cut them out this morning. Again, you don't need those to get started, but you will need them when it comes down to it. Okay. So the first section, when you get into the pattern after the supply list, is going to be the preface to the pattern. I know it's boring. I know that you are ready to dive into your pattern. You're excited. You just downloaded it. You just got it printed, or you're reading it on your computer. You're excited to get going. The preface to the pattern explains why it's set up the way that it is. Chloe and Jess both saying pretty. Thank you. One of the things that I will stress that is in that preface is this quilt is both a journey and it is a craftsman work of art. Okay. do not think that this quilt is going to be wham bam, I'm done. You know, it's not that kind of quilt. It was never designed to be that kind of quilt. It was designed to be a process. So you do need to take that into account. Please don't rush. Don't rush yourself. Don't think that you're going to get this done in 1 month. I couldn't get it done in 1 month. If you have something that doesn't line up, take the time and fix it. If you have something that is not jiving, take the time and fix it. If you get in past, your first month of assembly and you decide you absolutely despise this one color and it is looking horrific to you, fix it. Don't sit there and punish yourself, because this is a journey quilt, okay? Treat it like it is a journey, okay? I do recommend little Wonder Clips. You can also use pins. I'm going to be using pins today because my Wonder Clips are buried on the other side of the room and I've got tables in the way. But, that's the key. So when you get to the workbook, when you get to the main workbook, it tells you, go answer question 1 on the layout. Go answer that. Don't even do any of this until you go answer the layout question. The layout question is, do you want to go across and then down? Or do you want to go down and then across? So on this original one, the cover sample, I went across and down. What you guys are going to see me be doing with this new one is I'm going to go down and across. I'm going to make sure that it works 100% both ways. So go answer that question. And then what date are you starting your quilt on? It's a simple question. But it's one you got to think about. If you're doing this for somebody specific, if they would want you to start on their birthday, go ahead and start on their birthday. And then it's got, things, if you start on January 1st, go mark it, go fill out the rest of this. And then if you're not starting on January 1st, here's the other keys that you're going to need. If your starting month is less than 16 days, you can start it off to the side. You do not have to start it in the middle of you don't have to start it with filling in a month. If your month that you're starting in has more than 16 days, you're going to need to make it the first month. Okay? So that's going to play into how you're doing that. You need to decide how many data points you want to do. Whether you want to do 4, whether you want to do 2. And those are your variables. So if you chose the 4 variable quilt, when you go through the workbook, go highlight 4 variable every time you see it. Go highlight it. I mean, I did. I wrote the pattern and I literally went through my worksheet. I don't know how well you guys can see it, but I went through and I highlighted. Am I using more solids or blenders? I am using a lot of fabrics that are going to read as the color. So I didn't use blenders. Blenders would work really, really well. I would not use like an ombre because you're going to have to very carefully cut an ombre to get exactly what you need. You can use as print of a fabric as you want, or you can use as solid of a fabric as you want. Let me take you guys over to this quilt, and I'm going to show you what I've already got. Let me bring this up. Let's see if this will work. Oh, I didn't realize I hadn't transitioned you guys. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to make you sick. Okay. So I'm going to zoom over by moving the camera. So I do apologize. All right. So in this quilt, there's 2 fabrics right here. This pink and then this dark red. And if you look at them closely, that dark red has a lot of white print to it, but from a distance it still reads as a darker red. This pink fabric here has a little bit of a print to it. And I don't know how well it's showing up because I can only barely see my camera. But it still reads as a solid color. So a lot of these prints in this quilt are, a lot of these fabrics are prints. Not all of them, but a lot of them are prints. So this is like a black with purple print on it. And this is a purple with rose print on it. But from a distance, you can't tell that until you get up close. So you see that floral print there, and then the black with the purple print at your bottom right. So those are like the fabrics that I used for the original. And I apologize, let me do it this way so I don't completely obliterate your brains this morning or this afternoon, whatever time of day it is, and I have completely still done it with my camera. All right, hang on. We're gonna get you guys a little bit closer to. Let's see. All right, so I'm actually going to pull them out of my strip bags. I'm not going to pull them off of my shelf. I can show you from the back of the strip bags. So this fabric right here is a blue and it is solid. This one is also a solid and it's fairly close to the other one. This one is kind of like a mottled. It's a little bit harder to tell that it's mottled, especially in the plastic. This one is a variable print. So I've got some light sections and I've got some dark sections to this one. But that will work out just fine. And then I also have another solid. Let's see. I think maybe my oranges will have a lot more variety. I'm going to pull my oranges out. I mean, I've got, this is polka dots. I have a solid. This is a different polka dot. This one is an orange on orange polka dot. And then this one is kind of a blender. It reads as solid from a distance, but it's not going to be bad. Lydia says, do you think it would look okay for the center to be the same as the background fabric? I'm thinking of using black. So the center of what? So the center is your background. So these right here, that's what's going to be black in my new one. And these right here are also going to be black. So these centers here and these peels here are all going to be black in my quilts. Now here's one thing that I'm toying with the idea of, and I haven't done it yet, so I haven't tried it to see how it's going to look, but I'm also going to see how much black fabric I have and see if I can do it, because I can calculate that based off of how many half arcs and full arcs I need to fill in my quilt. I'm not going to do any stretched arcs this time. So instead of doing this stretched arc here where there's 4 fabrics in the full arc, it's going to have the 4 fabrics in the half arc, and then the rest is going to be a full piece of fabric. And what I'm thinking about doing is actually continuing that black fabric in my half arcs. Now my outside ones, I don't want that. I don't want black on the outside. I want a favorite color like purple, or I may pick something else. So my outside arcs, I have no idea what color I'm using yet. I have no idea what fabric. But on my half arcs here, inside, I am looking at putting the black fabric that's going to be my background as my half arc. If you are doing the 2 variable, you have to do half arcs and full arcs to fill in, so you don't have the option of a stretched arc. So the only people who have an option of a stretched arc are those who are doing a 4 variable quilt. So if you're doing a 2 variable, you're going to have to do half arcs, you're going to have to do full arcs to fill in for extra days, because every month has 32 days on this quilt. So you're going to need at least 12 half arcs to fill in for the 32nd day for every month. And then you may need more depending on which month you're talking about. So if that's what you're talking about, yes, black would absolutely be fine for the center. And there's a lot of people who are doing that kind of colorway. So I'm doing orange and blue, and I'm doing red, and I'm doing greens in my quilts. So all of my arcs have all of these bright colors, and it's going to contrast really, really well to that black. So these are going to really stand out, and they're going to look stunning against that black fabric. If you chose something like, so I love my husband, so I wanted to make, when I made this quilt, this is documenting his first year of life, and this is back from Birmingham, Alabama. So when I pulled his data, I pulled the data for Birmingham, Alabama, I was able to find 4 variables, but one of those I had to make up. So let's talk about variables real quick. But on his quilt, I wanted to do something that would match his personality, and he is much more traditional. So this really matches his personality and his color scheme, as far as what he would like to see and cuddle up with, more than what I would like. I mean, it's pretty. Don't get me wrong, guys. This quilt is stunning. It's gorgeous, but it's not my colors. It's not me. It's not modern. It's not edgy. It's none of that. It's very much him, not me. Nocturne Kona. Yes, probably. It's, I don't know. I think it was just listed as black. I don't think it was listed as Nocturne. But it's black. It's definitely black. I was going to originally do a black grunge, but I realized I didn't have enough of that fabric to do it with. And so I decided to swap to Kona because I could get enough Kona to do it. If you guys are not shopping Kona fabrics because they are a Robert Kaufman brand, then maybe check out Paintbox. I've heard that they are really good. Check out, there's a lot of different brands that offer solids, and they will offer blacks. Make sure that whatever black you buy, if you're gonna do black, make sure you buy the same brand, and make sure you buy enough of it. Fabric has the same problem that embroidery floss, like DMC floss, can have, where it's a lot number. So you might get a lot number one day that's perfect, the exact same shade that you want, and then, oh, Nocturne Kona, it's color of the year. I would love to have some of that. I would totally revamp this whole quilt to do it in Nocturne. I would, yeah, absolutely. I love that purple. I might have to edge the quilt in that shade. That would be fantastic. But this is 2024 values that I'm going to be doing. But I'm sewing in 2025, so I could meld the two. I could meld them, I guess. Maybe. Yeah, we'll see. Okay. So back to the workbook for just a second. As you are working through the workbook, I know it's a beast. Okay, it is quite literally pinning down every value, every detail that you need. Okay, you're not going to come away from the workbook without having all the information you need to put all your data in place. Okay, that's the brain power of the quilt, is that workbook, because you're going to need to know how many arcs you need to cut. You're going to need to know how many of everything else you're going to need to cut. Welcome in, William. Welcome. We're going to get you on this quilting track, I promise. So there's a pieces workbook and it accompanies your layout workbook and layout sheet. That is the very next page after the workbook. What the pieces workbook does, if you guys can look at it, you're going to, it looks like Greek, okay? It absolutely looks like Greek. So using your main workbook, go to question 2. If you selected 2A, your outer arc pieces will be full fabric arcs, okay? So it's telling you what they need to be. And all of the inner arcs follow a very specific pattern. Everybody's talking to William now. Distracted. I need to get him over here so he can try to figure this out with us, right? Yeah, we need to get you making this, William. That's the overall consensus. All right. If you are looking at your pieces workbook, if you see the M, that is your center, okay? That is going to be your center no matter where you are in this workbook. What you're seeing in this layout here, this little spreadsheet layout, is you are seeing your entire month, okay? You know what? Let me do it this way. We're going to put the iron off to the side so I don't accidentally burn my sheet protector. Okay? And I'm going to get this to come down. Let me take you guys off of it because it's going to take a minute to adjust. Let's see. There we go. So I can see what I'm doing. And I don't make you guys sick at the process. All right. Let me see what you guys are seeing. Okay. It's kind of dark. Gotta love technology, you guys, right? Technology is both our upcoming and the bane of our existence, right? All right, we're going to do a different thing. We're going to do, let's see. There we go. That's what I'm going to do. All right. So you guys are not going to see me for a minute, but you guys are going to be seeing the page out of the workbook. Okay? So let me get you guys over. Okay. So this is the page out of the workbook that we're dealing with. This is the pieces workbook, and this comes right after your workbook pages. So I know I may not be able to zoom in enough for you guys to be able to read all of this, but this right here is your layout for 1 month of your quilt. So you're going to have 1, 2, 3, and 4 M pieces for your month. So your month is going to be made up of 4 centers. Okay, your M's are your centers. Then you're going to have your arc that ends in 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay? So those are going to correspond to your months. Okay? If I had printed this out where you guys are going to have the entire layout, this would have been probably a 100-page pattern, and I didn't want to do that to anybody. This is a lot of information, okay? So when you were looking at your arc numbers, all of these arcs that are in here, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, they all start at the left-hand side of your centers, okay? And then go up, right, and bottom, okay? So when you are laying out your arc numbers, those are going to be the arc numbers you're going to go with. So for example, for M1, and I'm going to flip over and pull this over. Well, actually, you know what? Okay. So when you're looking at your layout sheet, you're going to have M1, 2, 7, and 8. That is your M1. That is your month 1. Okay? Then 3, 4, 9, and 10, if you're going across, that's going to be your month 2. If you're going down, it's going to be down here. It's going to be 13, 14, 19, and 20. Okay? So that's why these are not in a traditional, all right, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. That's why it is all the way across, because you can do either layout. Okay? So when you're looking at your arcs, so 1, 2, 7, and 8, you're going to have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So when we come over here, if you're going across, when you go to M3, that's going to be a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay? So that's how the numbering is on this pattern. Okay? Let me grab the next section that you guys need to see. And if I am confusing you, please say so. Please, please, please say so. Okay, so these are the block pages. Okay, there's a lot of block pages, but you only need them, you only need to look at them if you need them. Okay, you don't necessarily need to print them unless you just want to fill them in and color them in as you go. Okay, so if you see here, M1, 2, 7, and 8, this is always going to be month 1, no matter if you're going across or down as your first thing. Okay, so if you see here, you've got M1, so that's going to be your bag M1. Okay, so you can go back to your layout sheet, see how you colored that in, put that colored center in your bag M1. Okay, your arc to the right is going to be your first one, so 30 is your first one, 31, 32, and 33. Then you're going to go up here, this is your M2. Okay, so arc 35 goes in this bag, but your other arc, your arc between them does not go in the bag. Your arc 34 is over here. Okay, so 34, 35, 36 will actually be in a different bag. Okay, so you'll be able to look by these arcs as to where they're going. Okay, so I don't want you to panic. We're going to work through this together. Okay, please do not panic. All right, I'm going to leave my block workbook out so I have it, but you don't necessarily need to print it. Now, how many of you have I confused? Is it clear as mud? Is it clear as mud? I know that's a lot. It's brain power. It is brain power. Everybody's so quiet. The chat is so quiet. I know you guys are listening. I know I'm not mad. Okay? I'm going to tear off freezer paper because that's what I'm going to be using for this project this year. I decided I didn't want paper stuck in my project, and so we are doing freezer paper. So while you guys are talking, while you guys are thinking, I am going to pre-score my freezer paper. I'm going to score it to match my sewing template. So that's what we're going to do. Everybody's so quiet. If I've lost you, I understand. I just need to know what I need to do to help. That is what I need. I'm going to have to watch the replay when captions work and my brain is not hurting. Absolutely. Chloe says she's going to rewatch. Yes. William says he's got a remarkable amount of sewing done now that he's not cruising fabric shops and thrift stores. Yes. It's amazing what you can get done when you're not buying. It's amazing. All right. So I'm going to do a little bit of sewing. Clay says she has understanding. Okay, yes. So I want to get a little bit of sewing in, so that's what we're going to do. But I don't want you guys to feel like you can't do this or anything else. So please, 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 if you have any questions at all, please put them in the chat. The MOTV enters blocks. MOTV enters blocks. I'm confused. I'm definitely confused. You're going to have to help me. Month center blocks. Yes. Yes. M is always going to be your center block. So everybody is going to start on M1. And everybody is going to be working on that one as their first block, per se. Even if you are putting... Okay. Let me back up. All right, if you are starting at a different place in the month, then you will do a couple of arcs that are going to be on your outside edges. So you might be doing arcs, if you're starting at the top, let's see, and you've got your days are less than 16, you are going to have, it's going to be arcs 27, 28, 1, and 2. Okay? Those are going to be your starting arcs. I am not doing that with this quilt. So my first arc is going to be arc 30, because that's where it falls in the block layout. So January 1st and 2nd is going to be on arc 30. January 3rd and 4th is going to be on arc 31. January 5th and 6th is going to be on arc 32. 7th and 8th is going to be on arc 33. And then when you go to your next block, okay, if you were going across, then your next block is going to be M3 and 4, and then 9 and 10. So your next blocks are going to start at arc 30, arc 50, 51, 52, 53. If you are going down and across, then you are going to be starting, if I've got this right, without looking back at my layout, that's going to be 90, 91, 92, and 93. Okay? So your arc numbers will vary depending on which layout you chose. So if you're going to go down and then across, you're going to have a different layout than those who are going across then down. And give me a second. Let me stitch the rest of the outline of my paper here, and I'm going to pull this quilt and show you guys what I'm talking about. So, well, okay, I have one more row. No? Did I get that all? Yeah, I got that all. Okay, so my outline is done. All right. So now you guys get to see the mess behind the quilts. Okay. All right, so in this quilt, in the sample quilt, up here is a full arc. That is above M2. Okay, this is M2. So there's a full arc here. This is M1. Okay. So this is one of those outside arcs. This is arc 1 up here. This is a pieced arc. So this is August 28th and 29th, I think. And this one is 30 and 31. So this is arc 28. Okay. So if you are doing a partially pieced month, you might have 1, 2, 3, 4 arcs that are partially pieced, or that are pieced, to make your the first part of your first month if you're not starting at January 1. Because I am starting at January 1, my first arc is this one, which is arc 30. So we're gonna always go around in a circle. So 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. Does that make sense? You know what, let me reclip this so that you guys can see it and can look at it. So it's not completely obscure. If I can clip it this way. We're going to see if I can clip it this way. It may not clip very well because I do have seams there. So we're going to see if it will. Alright, that's about as good as that's going to get. But I can clip this one over a little bit, make it a little bit easier. I'm sorry you guys are seeing my backside so much. That was not my intention for today, I promise. Okay, so does that make sense? So we've got M1, 2, 7, and 8. This is M1, M2, M3, M4. 5 and 6 are over here, I promise. Okay? So 1, 2, 7, and 8. Those are your month centers. That is for your first month of your quilts. Okay? And you guys will start seeing me putting this together because I'm going to put together one arc today. And then when I come back for my next live on this, you guys are going to see more of January put together. Okay? So, on your listing, your Q pieces are your peels. Okay? So if you have those colored in a specific way, you can actually put them with numbers and mark them exactly where they need to go. Do you have to do that if you're doing all the same fabric? No, you don't. I wouldn't necessarily even need to mark my month centers because they're all going to be the same fabric for me. But if you want to, that's what the numbers are there for. Okay? And then your setting squares, those are going to be your SS numbers. Okay? So the next time when I come in here, I'm going to show you guys, like, I'm going to have some arcs, I'm going to have my setting squares, and I'm going to have my peels, and I'm going to have my month centers, and I'm going to show you the numbering and how this is going to lay out. I think some of that will make more sense too once we get to that point. Okay? Am I still clear as mud? I got 17 people in here, you guys. 17 people and no questions. I'm shocked. I'm so shocked. You guys need to ask questions if you have questions. So I'm going to do freezer paper this time. When I did the original, I used printer paper, which is fine. Printer paper will not hurt. It is a little wasteful, but I knew I needed that. I knew I needed that way. With freezer paper, the one challenge is that once you get done piecing your arc, you can take your freezer paper off, and then your arc has no numbers to mark it as to where it goes. And that's the main reason for all of these numbers and the letters and everything else, is so that you know exactly where everything's going to go. And you can make this as cerebral as you want. make it as brain work much as you want. Or you can lower the brain work, choose 1 or 2 fabrics, you know, for things. Andrea says she's a visual learner and from the show me state, so I need you to do it as you explained. Okay, fair enough. So you will see all of this again. Absolutely, you're going to see every last bit of this again. The first part is going to be working through your workbook. So start working through your workbook, and then see what questions you have. See what stops you. See what makes sense. What decisions you can make. Dre says, "Me too, Andrea." Yeah, absolutely. And that is why I wanted to do a video series specifically on temperature rings, and all of this is going to be. It's going to be in that temperature rings playlist, so you can always come back and view more temperature rings playlist information. Some of it will make more sense the more you see it. Some of it won't. Some of it is just a matter of, you know, monkey see, monkey do, if you want to call it that, because that's, you know, that's what I call it. I am very much a visual learner, and I am definitely a monkey see, monkey do. Once I see somebody do something, I can absolutely recreate it, most of the time. Now, when it comes to music and playing instruments, I am a tactile learner. I am not a visual learner. But when it comes to quilting and all of that, once I see it, it is so much easier. All right. So I have got... Did I not bring my fabric scissors? No, I did not. Okay. I'm going to trim off the extra of my freezer paper real quick. And then I'm going to show you guys what this is going to look like. How many of you are choosing to do freezer paper for your sewing method? How many of you have chosen to do that? Or how many of you have chosen to do paper, like foundation paper? How many are doing fabric, foundation fabric? And there's no wrong answer. There's no wrong answer. You can do whichever method works for you. I know I'm 30 seconds ahead of you guys, so when I ask a question, I realize it takes a minute for you to be able to answer. So if you're watching the replay, that's what the delay is. I'm waiting for people to have a chance to be able to answer. All right. And I'm just going to rough cut this around. All right. So let me bring you guys over so you guys can see this again. You know what? Let's do it that way. Okay. So this is the Sewing Guide G. If you're doing a 4 variable quilt, this is the only one you necessarily need. And then you can also use K if you're doing stretch sharks. Welcome in, Terry. Andrea says that she might use dryer sheets. She's been using them for foundations and scrap quilt blocks. Absolutely. So what you want to do then is you'll want to trace this onto your dryer sheet for every dryer sheet that you need, or for every arc that you need. Okay, so when you work through your workbook, it's going to tell you how many of Sewing Guide G you need, or Sewing Guide K, whichever one you're using, or if you're using both, it will walk you through how many of each of these you need. Okay, so you'll need to set aside that many dryer sheets and trace this that many times. Now you can do this as you go, or you can do it all at once. Okay, so this 1 inch square here, when you go to print this sheet out, please make sure that that is a 1 inch. Make sure that that is measuring 1 inch. I did hand draw it using a ruler. I'll be away from the keyboard, but listening, says so, Terry. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. So make sure your 1 inch is a 1 inch, okay? The other thing that you'll probably want to copy over, you'll get accustomed to this the further in you get, but especially starting out, you'll want to copy over your numbers. So on G, your numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is the order that we did this on. Chloe says you traced on freezer paper. Yes, I did. So what I did is I took this sheet. This is actually the sheet I use. This is my printout sheet. And I took it to my machine and I stitched through the paper with no thread in my machine. Okay? So I stitched every line that you see on the reverse of my paper. I stitched through all of these lines. I didn't need the 1 inch line, but I stitched through all of those onto my freezer paper. So here's my freezer paper, okay? It is just a piece of regular everyday freezer paper, and there you go. You can see the lines that I've stitched through this, okay? Now, you can trace it with a pen if you want. It's up to you. Do this however you feel comfortable. If you've done paper piecing before and this is super comfortable for you, then do it how you feel comfortable, okay? I want my lines to be easy to press, so I went ahead and stitched on here. So what I'm going to do when I sew, because I'm using freezer paper and I want to be able to reuse it, when I press this to my fabric, I will fold my paper back and I will sew right next to my paper. I will not sew on my paper, okay? With freezer paper, you don't sew through the paper. I just sewed through it to trace my lines, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I can lay it on top of my original pattern piece here. I'm going to go ahead and put my numbers on here. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. Now, for sewing pattern G, it's going to be the same thing over and over and over again. If you are using sewing pattern G and K, if you're doing stretched arcs, I did put a note in the pattern, please do not pre-cut your strips for sewing guide K, okay? If you are doing a 4 variable and you are using sewing guide K to stretch your arcs, please do not pre-cut your fabrics for that, okay? Cut them when you come to them. Don't pre-cut them in advance, because the sizes that you need for sewing guide K are significantly different than the sizes that you need for sewing guide G, okay? So G is different than K, and K needs bigger pieces of fabric, okay? So don't pre-cut for K if you're using a 4 variable quilt. Cut them when you get to them. You won't need them if you're starting January 1st, you won't need them until closer to the end of the month to stretch your arcs. Oh yes, Chloe, she says, so you could print on foundation paper piecing paper. Yes, absolutely. So what I showed in one of my other videos for temperature rings, I did show some paper products that you can use. There's one out by YLI. There's one out, I think Carol Doak maybe is the name, if I'm remembering correctly. There's a lot of paper piecing products out there, and if they say that they can go through your printer, absolutely. Now you can also do freezer paper in your printer. If you cut your sheets at 8.5 by 11 and feed them through your printer, yeah, you can absolutely print. You just need to make sure that the paper, the non-shiny side, is what's going to go up against your ink cartridge. You don't want to put the shiny side of freezer paper up against your ink cartridge. It will not end pretty. Oh, you're fine, Joy. She says, I'm sorry, Tammy, I'm going to be having a bad day. I watched replay. Yeah, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. And I will still look up that template for you. So please do not panic about it. It is on my list. That's the first thing I'm doing when I get off of here today. So yeah, when you get done, like however you need to print these is however you need to print them, okay? Print one, make sure that you've got that 1 inch square at the right size, and then print as many as you need for your pattern. So, for example, I'm looking at the main workbook, and let's see. I love question 4. Can anybody tell me what question 4 is? No, I'm sorry. Don't go. You don't have to go look. You don't have to go look. Where is it? Where is it? Month markers, setting squares, finishing month. Okay. Finishing the month, 4 variable quilts or 2 variables. So 11 is for the 4 variables, and then 12 is for the 2 variable quilts. So on the 4 variables, you have 2 options for how to finish your month. You can either stretch arc with Sewing Guide K, or sewing fabric in place the second day where you're doing a half arc, which is what I'm doing this time around. On months with 31 days, you'll need a 15 of Sewing Guide G. This has 2 days each. So for the 31 day months, that's how many you need of G, okay? So you can highlight and then add those up, okay? Lorraine says sewing next to your fold and the paper doesn't change the size. No, it does not. Not by enough to matter. And the nice thing is, once we are done with this arc, once we're done piecing this in its entirety, you will be trimming this down. So that's why I did it this way, so that you have the extra fabric there. So when you go to trim down, you have the ability to trim it to a different template if you are using a different template pattern. So if you can't afford an AccuQuilt cutter, you don't want to buy an AccuQuilt cutter, whatever your reason is, you do not have to do that. Okay? So there's a lot of options there. So I'm going to set my month guide out of the way, and I'm putting thread back in my machine, I believe. Let me see if I actually put the thread in there. I did put the thread in there. I'm so proud of myself. I couldn't remember. All right, so here's the other key point. And I'm going to point this out, and you guys can quietly judge me from a distance. Okay? The sewing thread that I'm going to need for piecing my arcs to my background pieces for my quilt is going to be black. Do I necessarily need black for my arcs? No, I do not. I could easily get away with white thread and it would look absolutely fantastic. However, I am going to use black thread. Okay. So, you know what? I have to do something that I haven't done yet. So you guys get to watch me do it live because I didn't think ahead. And in case you guys wonder, there is my layout worksheet. And it's got all of my months filled in on the down and across. Okay. So when I go to get February, it tells me what centers I need to get and what arc numbers I need to work through. Okay. So that's the other thing. So if you look at your both across and down and across, your layout worksheet tells you you need centers M1, M2, M7, M8. And then it says you need arc 30 through arc 45. Your label setting squares are SS 81, 82, 83. And then your square to go with it is 117. Okay. So right here, this is the first full month that I did in this quilt. Okay. So your label setting squares, if you're going to do paper piecing letters, that's going to be 81, 82, 83. And then if you're matching your fabric, 117 is going to match those other three. Okay. So I didn't list all the other setting squares you need for that month, but I listed which ones are your labels. Okay. So when I go to February, my February is going to be down here versus over here. If you're going across then down, then you're going to have 3, 4, 9, and 10 as your centers. You're going to have arc 50 through arc 65, and your label setting squares, so the OCT here is 84, 85, 86, and 118 is your color match. Okay. So I did that so that you guys can find it easily. So I wanted to pull that out while I was at it. All right. So when you work through your workbook, it's going to have you go to your color sheet. The one thing you're noticing on my color sheet is I have no fabrics on here. I have not cut my samples to put on here. That will be something that I do late tonight or tomorrow or something like that. I've got to find my glue. So I have not pulled my fabrics out of my bags and put them with them, but I did pay attention when I was putting them in their Ziplocs, okay? So you can go back and label them with a Sharpie if you want. That's probably what I'm going to do, but I didn't need that. If you are doing stretched arcs, your stretched arc number sheet, you're going to fill that in as well, okay? And I know I'm jumping around, so please bear with me. I am so sorry, because I know I jumped. I know I jumped. Okay, so when you get ready to sew, and I'm going to recommend that you put your color sheet and your data sheet in sheet protectors, okay? You can put them in the same sheet protector, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to have the colors chart on one side and the data sheet that I'm working on the other side. I only have January 1st and 2nd filled in. So I don't have all the way through the 11th filled in. So I can't sew past the 2nd, but I can sew one arc. That's going to give me enough to sew one arc, okay? The one thing that I haven't done is I need to go grab my jump and fill in my values because I did not fill in my values. So I have the high and the low for every, so I'm doing high temperature, and that's going to be my reds. My hours of daylight is my oranges. My wind speed is my greens. And then my low temperatures is my blues. So that is the order that I'm going to do them in. So my high and low temperatures are not right next to each other. They didn't need to be. And so they're not. They're definitely not. All right, let me grab a calculator real quick. All right, so on my variable color chart, so my color chart, this matches how many fabrics I'm doing, which I'm doing 7 per variable, or I'm doing 7 values per variable. So I'm doing 4 variables, so I've got 4 spots, and then I've got 7 spots across for how many fabrics I'm doing. You can do as many as 9, you can do as few as 5. I did not put an option for even numbers. There's a reason. When you start dealing with an even number, then your brain may shut off the options that you need to be able to do the odd numbers. Like it's going to look more aesthetically pleasing having an odd number of values. So that is why I stuck with odd numbers. You want at least 5 because you're going to want at least that much variation in your colors. And you're going to be negative 25 here in Casper. The highest high is 104. It's crazy. It's crazy. So when you're filling in your values workbook, that 104 is added to the 25, meaning that my difference is 129 values that I need to divide into 7 spots. And that left my jump at 18. So I'm going to take away 18 from my negative 25, and that leaves me with negative 7. So my lowest values for my high is negative 25 to negative 7. Okay? And because it's a negative here, I'm going to, let's see. And if you have questions, definitely stop me, okay? All right, so my jump is 18. So I'm going to take 7 away from 18, so that leaves me 11. So it's going to be 11. Actually, hang on. Negative 6 is where it starts. and I need to add 18 to that. That's what I need to do. All right, so 18 to that is going to leave us with a 12 degrees. Okay, so my next one's going to start at 13, and I'm going to add 18 to that, and that's going to leave me at a temperature of 31. In my 4 spot, I'm going to start at 32 as my low. And let's see, plus 18 is going to leave me at 50 degrees. Okay, and we're going to start with 51 degrees. Plus 18 is 69. Okay, we're going to start at 70. Nope, 70 plus 7 is not what I wanted. My calculator does not like me today. All right, and that's going to leave me at 88. Okay, and then 89 to 104 is going to be my last jump. So that is going to be different than my 18. So my jump is only 15 there, but that will still be okay. So let me bring this, actually let me finish filling, well, yeah, let me finish filling, or no, I'll bring this down. I'll bring it down. I gotta think for a second, you guys, sorry. Okay. So, all right, so this is my high temperature, okay? So my lowest low is negative 25. Jumping 18 leaves me at negative 7. Then you start in the next column, negative 6 to positive 12. You go up to 13, positive 30, or positive 13 to 31, 32 to 50, 51 to 69, 70 to 88, 89 to 104. Okay? You do not want the same temperature or same value to be in any 2 columns. So when I got to 7, I couldn't just add 18 to 7. I needed to start at negative 6 because I can't have negative 7 in 2 values or in 2 columns, okay? Please let me know if that makes sense or not. Please let me know. All right, so I'm going to skip hours of daylight. I'm going to come back to that one. Wind speed is going to be a jump of 10. So you can't have wind speed less than 0. So I've got 0 to 10. I've got 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40, 41 to 50, 51 to 60, and 61 to 70. Andrea says, yes, making sense. Yay! Awesome. All right, so low temperature. My low temperature range, my highest low temperature is 54, which I kind of feel like maybe I might not have the right values, but we're gonna go with it. We're gonna go with it. And then my negative 42 is my lowest low. That's a difference of 96, which leaves my jump at 13. So if you live in a milder climate that doesn't have as high of a high or doesn't have as low of a low, you might have a narrower range. So an 18-point range is really, really big, but it will be okay. It will be fine. Okay? So negative 42. So 40. Let me get back over. Genius with the freezer paper. Thank you. Thank you. I've seen it done a few times, and I have not gotten to do it before, so I wanted to do it. So that's what we're going with. So, all right, negative 28. All right, so my lowest low, luckily no negatives here, says Andrea. Yeah, we're going to have some negatives by 1 week from today. So we're going to be in the negatives again. All right, so my lowest low is negative 42, and so that brings us up to 29. So my next one starts at 28, and I'm going to take away 13, so that's negative 15. And our jump is 13, so negative 14 brings us to negative 1. So we're going to go 0 to 13. We're going to go 14. That's going to be 27. I can do that math. 28. Add 13. Let's see. 28 plus 13 is 41. And so 42 to 54. Okay. Chloe says, wow, yes, we are already going to be hitting negatives. Now, last March or April, we were really hitting some negative temperatures. We were really hitting them. When we start hitting the negatives, if it is 0 or below, the dog gets his boots on. So he's fine until we hit negative, or until we hit 0. And then negatives, so he has to have his boots on if we are in the negatives, because he doesn't handle it well. He handles all the way down to that, but he doesn't handle anything below that. All right, so I said we were going to hold off on daylight, and here's why. I want to explain to you what I did, okay? Because I'm going to have to do some conversions as I work through my data sheets, okay? So hours of daylight may not matter much to you. And it really didn't matter much to me before I moved up here. Back in the Southeast, where I'm from, you saw a little bit of a difference, especially with the time change. That would really throw everybody. But you get into winter and people are saying, this is the shortest day of the year. And I never felt like it was the shortest day of the year. Like, it never felt like that. It was always, this is like nothing. This is nothing. I visited Alaska when I was in college, and we had almost 23 hours of daylight while I was there. Like, it was crazy. Like, we're having to, do blackout curtains in our hotel rooms, and in cabins, they have blackout curtains because they are so accustomed to people getting there and not being able to sleep because it is so bright. And that's crazy to me, like absolutely crazy. But it never really occurred to me that that would be such a big factor. And moving here, welcome in, Susie. She's lurking while long-arming. Awesome. So I never thought about the hours of daylight making that much of a difference. And in the Southeast, it really didn't. But up here, it does. It is, we're not just... we are in the mountains, so we're at 5,000 feet elevation, or above 5,000 feet. But to add to it, not only are we above 5,000 feet, but we are also further physically north towards North Pole. So our hours of daylight are significantly different from what I'm used to. So I wanted to document that. It seemed to me to be absolutely crazy how much the daylight can change. And we moved here in May, got the whole summer. We were enjoying the summer. We were absolutely enjoying the summer. The mild temperatures for us, because, we're coming from Southeast with the 90 degree plus 90% humidity and just oppressive heat and humidity. We get up here and it's 95 degrees outside, and I'm not dying. Like, I'm not having trouble breathing. It's easy. But then we started hitting winter, and I'm going, oh my gosh, this is substantial. Like, this is different. So it really feels different. So I wanted to capture that in the temperature quilt with the amount of the temperature change too, because we're going to have 90 degree days, and we're going to have, today it's 32 right now. Seriously guys, this is normal for this time of year for us, and we're going to have negatives next week. So this is kind of our normal, and I wanted to capture the hours of daylight along with the temperatures, because that's going to be so substantially different than what you see in this quilt. This quilt, you can get some hot days in October and November and December, and it really doesn't look like winter ever happened. There's some cold temperatures there. There really are. But it really doesn't look like winter happened. So I want to capture that, the joy of that for me in Wyoming. So how do you capture hours of daylight in a temperature quilt? You convert everything to minutes. So if you've got 14 hours, 14 times 60. And that tells you how many hours or how many minutes that you had of daylight. Okay? So I'm calling it hours of daylight, but I'm categorizing it, calculating it by minutes of daylight. So the most daylight that we had that is normal for us is 15 hours and 20 minutes. That's a lot of daylight. The lowest one, December 21st, 9 hours, 1 minute. I mean, seriously, guys, 9 hours is 6 hours less of daylight per day than what we get during the summer. That's substantial. That's not like what we were seeing in the southeast. So, 15 hours and 20 minutes of daylight calculates out to 920 minutes. The low value of the 9 hours, 1 minute calculates out to 541 minutes, which is a difference of 379 minutes between the high value and the low value. So it's a jump of 54. So my low of 541, I'm going to add 54, or no, my low is not 541. My low, oh yeah, did I write? Yeah, my low is 541. Okay, and jump is 54. So there we go. So 595. And I have no idea how this is going to end up looking. So this is an experiment. So 596 is the next one. And then I add 54. That brings us up to 650 minutes. And we're going to add 54 again, and that brings us up to 705 minutes. So there's a lot of variables that you can play with of things that will help you or that you might want to know about your location that you're doing. So I couldn't go back and necessarily ask them to remeasure things for me in Alabama back for that quilt. I couldn't ask them to go back and do that. So what my values for that quilt were, let me write this down, 815, is I did high temperature, I did low temperature, I did wind speed because I could get that, and I also did the difference between the high and the low. So if you are wanting an easy value, you can do a difference between kind of value, and that will tell you what your final value is. Okay? So on this quilt, I did my high temperatures in the middle. So 1 and 4 are my high temperatures. 5 and 2 are my difference between high and low. So the green is my difference between high and low. My blue is the low temperatures for the day, and my purple is wind speed. Okay? That's what this quilt is. I'm not doing the same layout this time. Okay? So instead of doing doing 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So my variables are going to I can't think of words, guys. My variables are going to collate or rotate through the quilt. So I'm going to always have red on one side, and then have the blue on the other. So it's going to range red, orange, green, blue, red, orange, green, blue in the middle of my arc. Okay. So when you are, let me show you guys again. Let me show you. Let me just show you. Okay. All right. So when you're filling out your temperature chart, your color chart. Okay. This is my 7 value 4 variable color chart. Your numbers here are your strip numbers. Okay? So when I am filling this out, yes, Melina, I am. She says, hey, you're still here. Yep, still here. All right, so my strip numbers are 1 and 8. 1 is not necessarily going to be a low temperature, and 8 is not always going to be a high temperature, okay? Those are the positions in the strips, okay? So my variable 2 is going to be 7 and 2, 6 and 3 for my wind speed, and 5 and 4 is for my low temperature, okay? So, with that being said, you know what? That doesn't lay out right. That's putting my blue in the center. I'm putting the red on the outside. Hang on. 1, 2, 3. Never mind. It is right. It is right. We're going to work with it. It's going to be what it's going to be. I'm following my own directions, so if I've screwed up, then you guys are going to see I screwed it up, okay? That's what it's going to be. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my data sheet. I've got January 1st and January 2nd, okay? Your odd number is always going to be your first day if you're starting at the beginning of the month, okay? So if you are stretching arcs or doing something different, this may be different for you, okay? You know what? Let me do this. All right, because we're going to get to some sewing. I want to do some sewing, okay? We are going to do some sewing. All right. So here's my strip. Let me adjust this camera just a hair. We're going to bring it back up. And we're going to angle it so you guys can see better. There we go. Okay. And I'm also going to set my screen so I can see what I'm doing better. Okay. All right, so this is my foundation paper piecing. So one, by my color chart, if you're looking at your strip numbers, so look at your strip numbers. My strip 1 is going to be my high temperature. Okay? So I need my high temperature for January 1st, which for January 1st is 46 degrees. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look on here and find where 46 is. 46 falls between 32 and 50. So it's going to fall to fabric F04. Okay? If you have your colors, if you have your fabrics glued in place, you'll have a fabric sample. I do not have my fabrics glued in place, so I'm going to have to look for my bag for F04. Okay? So let me grab my bag for F04. And everybody will have F1 through 10. Okay? So when I say these numbers, these apply to your fabric numbers, not mine, or not necessarily anyone else's. Okay. All right. Now, so we are going to be sewing strip 1. Oh yeah, this is right. Never mind. I'm panicking. Okay. All right, so we're sewing strip 1. Now, for me, strip 1 is cut a different size than strip 8. So please make sure that you look and see what your strip numbers should be cut. I'm going to make one adjustment to the way my stuff is set up. Let me grab a Sharpie. We'll grab the red Sharpie. No, I want to see blue. I'm going to see blue. All right, so one thing I'm going to do is this is my F04 bag. And so I'm going to come over here and write F04, okay? I know that may not show up very well for you. There we go, F04. Now, I'm not going to do this because I'm not giving away my information. But I have strip 1 and strip 8 because they are different sizes. Okay? My strip 1 and strip 8 are cut according to the cutting workbook. So, if you want to write your strip 1 size on your bag, you can. So you can write strip 1 and write your strip size, and write strip 8 and write your strip size. You know, you can do that on your bag. You still want to clip them with what strip is what, okay? So I'm going to show you something important about strip 1 here. Okay, this is my first strip that I cut off the fabric. Look over here at all this extra, like all this raggedy edge. There's no need to pre-trim that off. Leave it on there. There's no need to pre-trim, okay? As long as your minimum is your strip width, then you're good to go, okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that one out. That's my strip 1. And I'm not setting this bag back in my bag, okay? I'm going ahead and getting 2 pulled out. All right, 2 is my hours of daylight. And for January 1st, it was 544, which falls in FO8. So now I need to pull out the bag for FO8, which is an orange. So there's FO8. Oh, you guys, it's a polka dot. I get to sew with a polka dot for January 1st. That's exciting. I was not expecting that, but I'm super excited by it, and I don't know why. But I get to sew with a polka dot. Okay. So here's my FO8 bag. And I'm going to go ahead and also do the same thing with this bag that I did with the other one. I'm going to transfer my number to my bag so I know what I am looking for. Okay. Now having the fabric samples on your color chart will also help you with putting these back in the bags as you go. I do recommend that you don't get too far without putting things back. Okay, don't do more than 1 day without putting your fabrics back in your bags. Otherwise, you may be sitting there wondering, okay, which fabric is this? Where did it go? All right, so because this is the first part of paper piecing, I'm going to move that strip marker to the other end of my strip so it's out of my way. Okay, your first piece is going to be right side up on the shiny side of your paper. Okay, now there is a layout guide that you can print that will tell you exactly how to lay this out on your sheet. Okay, you do not want to lay this fabric where it is right side up down that center line. You want to lay your piece 1 where it is 1/4 inch away from your line on this side. Okay, that is important because you want your bias edges at the edges to line up exactly the way they need to line up. Okay, now you can pin it, or you can glue it, or you can tape it. Don't staple, but you can do whichever one you want. And I'm going to go ahead and fold my freezer paper on my sewing line. Okay, so I now have my seam allowance, and I'm going to flip it back over, and I'm going to lay my next fabric, my strip 2, against my strip 1, up against the seam allowance. And I'm going to hold that, make sure it's in place, and that it's going to cover my piece here, the piece that I'm covering. And I'm going to take this to the machine and sew real quick. So this black thread may really show up on the quilt, but I want you guys to be able to see it. And I'm going to probably quilt this quilt with black, so I am not super concerned about it. It's going to be what it's going to be. Now, here's the other key. Your normal stitch allowance or seam allowance, let me back up. Your normal stitch length is probably going to be in the 2 point something range. okay? I am dropping my stitch length down to a 1.7. You can do that if you are stitching through paper or whether you are not stitching through paper, okay? So whichever way you are stitching, it does not hurt you one bit to decrease your stitch length in order to sew these pieces together. You want them to hold up, and this is going to take you a year to put together anyway. Don't sell yourself short, okay? There is no reason to sell yourself short. All right, so now you guys can really see my seam. It's super dark. Gotta love black thread, right? Gotta love black. All right, so I'm gonna clip off my extra thread. I don't need it. I don't want it hanging around. All right, so I can now fold that over, and I can actually go ahead and press it onto my freezer paper. So my freezer paper is going to hold it for me so I don't have to bother. I don't have to stress about pinning anything in place. And this is all going to come out when I'm done. So if you guys can see, there is no stitching on this paper. Okay, so it's all going to come out when I'm done. All right, so if you want, now that you have this piece in place, now that you have piece 2 in place, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this and I am going to rough cut. Looking for my scissors, you guys. I bury them. All right, I'm going to rough cut the extra away from piece 1. So I'm just going to fold this up along the edge of my seam guide, my stitching guide. And I'm just going to use some scissors and trim the extra, okay? I'm making sure not to trim into my piece 2, my orange piece. I don't want to trim that away, okay? I'm going to wait to trim 2 until I'm ready to sew piece 3 in place, okay? So now, this fabric from my F4 bag can go back in my F4 bag. My strip tag is still on the opposite end, so it's still there and in place, so I'm not losing it. And then I am done with that red for right now. All right, so my next value, my piece 3 that's going to go on here, is my wind speed. My wind speed for January 1st was 20 miles an hour. And that actually falls right at the top of my 2 range, which is fabric F16. So, just like I did before, I'm going to pull my fabrics out, or my little bags out, and I need my green ones, which are all the way at the bottom. They were the first ones that I cut, so we're going to have to pull them out. I'm trying not to drop my basket. I need to organize it a little bit better, but we'll get there. All right, so I said F16, that's 15, 17, 19, 20, 18, 21. Okay, where am I missing 16? Did I already pull it out earlier? We're going to find out. All right, or did it end up in the blues? It might have been, yep, it ended up in the blues. There's F16, okay. I feel like I'm calling fighter pilots. Does anybody else feel like that? When you do deal with F numbers, do you feel like they're fighter pilots? Fighter jets? I don't know why I feel like that. Okay. All right, so let's come back over here. And we're going to do the first trim with our add a quarter ruler. All right, so I'm going to flip this back over, and we're going to be sewing the line between 2 and 3. And if at any time your piece starts coming off, all you have to do is put this back on, put the freezer paper back on, and put it back under the heat. You do not need any moisture, so do not put steam on it. Just put a little bit of heat on it. Okay, so now I am ready I'm going to go ahead and trim this extra away. And there we go. Ah. And we are about to have a little bit of fun. Okay? So, I'm going to go ahead and show you. This is what's cut off, okay? But this is going back in my bag, and I will deal with it another time if I need to. Okay? So this is going back in FO8, because that's my hours of daylight bag, or that's my hours of daylight color. Okay, so this next piece that's going in here, this is piece 3 right here. Okay, this is the triangle it's covering. Okay, it does not need to go straight of grain. It needs to go at an angle. If it doesn't go at an angle, you do run the risk of having straight seams when you need a bias edge later in the quilt. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and prevent that. All right, this is my F16 fabric. Okay, so there is a trim guide in the book. Okay, there is a trim guide. Am I going to pull it out? I probably should. You know what? I will. I will pull it out. Because I can always print me another copy. Or I can trace it and we can do it live. Either way. Either way works. Alright. There's my templates. There's my trim guides. All right, you've got a strip 3, 5, and 7 that have trim guides, okay? That's what these are for. Now, you can do this without doing a trim guide. You absolutely can. But I did provide it to you for a reason, so you can use it. All right. So here's what I'm going to do after I move my iron a little bit out of the way so I don't possibly burn my sheet, my plastic sheet protector. All right, I'm going to take and I'm going to trace this strip 3 trim template. Okay, so this is not an exact science trim, you guys. You do not have to necessarily do this as an exact science. This is more a guide to help you, but I do recommend it. Alright, this is strip 3. I will end up needing strip 5 today. So we're going to go ahead and trace it while I'm here. And as long as you know what you're talking about with these, that is what matters. Okay? The key point is this is your strip, that is your trim side. Okay, so I'm going to just trim these out of, or cut these out of freezer paper as I go. Alright. And you can trim or you can trace these with a ruler. You can trace these, you know, and cut them out of template plastic, however you want to do them, okay? So I've got my trim templates here, and I'm going to rough cut them apart. I'll use this rotary blade, but I won't use my fabric scissors on freezer paper if I can avoid it. Okay. Alright, so I don't need 5 and 7 yet. I'll need them when I do January 2nd. But, so we're going to set those aside. Alright, so here's strip 3. And what I'm going to do, to cheat a little bit, because I'm using freezer paper, you guys will love this. Alright, I'm going to lay this on my fabric. And I'm going to line up my long edge because this is extra selvage. My strip should only be as wide as this is. But because I cut I didn't trim it. There's no, there's extra, okay? So I'm just gonna apply it to my fabric. Okay, so now my trim template is stuck to my fabric. Long enough for me to come over here with my mat, my ruler, and my rotary cutter. And let me turn this a direction I can see it. I want you guys to be able to see it too, but I need to be able to see it to cut it properly. Alright, so there's my trim line. I can see it now, just barely. And so now we have that trimmed away. I've got that freezer paper scrap. I can use this for 1-inch squares, okay? So I've got a little bit of scrap already, and this is just day one. This is going to be a trend. Please don't panic. All right. So I'm going to take the strip template off, and I have it for later. So that's going to go in my folder. All right. So now we're ready to apply this strip to our piece. Okay. And did I do it the wrong direction? Did I do it on the reverse? Yes, I did. Why did it do that? Why did it do that? Alright, bear with me, guys. Bear with me. Why is my trim template... Did I reverse 3 and 7? Did I reverse 3 and 7? Oh, I didn't reverse 3 and 7. I put it on the wrong side of the fabric. Alright. So you guys get to see... Alright, I did this wrong, so scratch what I just did. I had my fabric right side up. Your fabric needs to be wrong side up. Okay. So now I'm going to put this on here. And I do probably have plenty of this fabric, so I'm not worried. But if you are worried, I'm glad you guys didn't do this in advance. Alright, so it's on the wrong side of my fabric. So now this is going to be the correct angle. So write that on your strip templates, that it needs to be on the wrong side of the fabric. I wrote it on the template, but I'm sitting here not paying attention to my own writing. So it's not a problem in the pattern, it is a problem with my execution of my own pattern. Alright, so we now have the strip trimmed the correct direction. The chat's so quiet. The chat is so quiet, you guys. Alright. So now that I've got that trimmed, when I go to put this on here, your straight edge is going to be along this seam, which means you're not going to have a straight edge up here, which is exactly what we needed. Okay? So we're going to put this in place so that it covers as much of this sewing guide as possible. And we're going to take this to the machine, folding this piece down and stitching right next to our freezer paper. Okay? Yeah, I like when a plan comes together, especially when I follow my own plan. So you can make that as well out of the cutting board plastics, like what Andrea was talking about earlier. You can absolutely make it out of that if you want to. It is entirely up to you on how you do those strip trim templates as to what you're going to see. Alright, so now I've got my seam sewn. I'm going to clip off my extra. Alright. Get my hands in there. I'm going to move my cutting board out of the way so I don't burn it. And I'm going to go ahead and fold my fabric out, or fold my freezer paper out, and then I'm going to press my strip back. So now you have a perfectly placed strip 3. So you're not having to think about that bias. I've already thought about it for you. You're just having to follow the same steps over and over and over again. Now, as this is just day one, it's going to get easier as we go. Okay? Because you're going to get used to it. All right. Now, if I had extra on this orange, that would be the time to trim it. My next seam is going to be going along here. I'm going to go ahead and rough trim this away so I have the extra fabric off of my table and out of my way. Chloe says, I love small cutting mats, right? They are fantastic for things like this. And you can get small cutting mats like that at Dollar Tree. And if you accidentally burn or warp one, you're not out a whole lot of money, which is fantastic. Like, it's so nice. So nice. All right, so this is going back in my bag so I don't lose track of what fabric I'm working with. Now, if you've not already cut your scrap pieces for your color chart, and you're not, I have not cut my 2.5 inch squares for my label yet, but if you haven't cut your scraps, put your little scrap pieces for your color chart, put them back in your bag, and then you have them ready, and you're not cutting into any extra fabric, okay? So you're not wasting any fabric by cutting that square out. You're just cutting a square out of something you've already cut. All right, so now we're ready for piece 4. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, and 3. So piece 4 does not have a cutting chart, does not have a template. We won't get to templates again until we get to 5. All right, so my low for January 1st, my low is variable 4. My low for January 1st was 17. That's going to fall on the fabric 5 for that one, and that's going to be F26. So let me go through my blues, and let's find F26. So you guys can really see I have not pre-prepped any of this beyond cutting my strips, okay? I have not, done, any kind of, finagling or working around or whatever. This is all exactly the way that it is coming together, okay? And these are last year's values. They are not this year's values. So I can kind of compare them to this year and see how it goes. But it is what it is. All right. So this is another bag where I have 2 strips, strip 5 and strip 4. So we're working with strip 4 because we're covering piece 4. So strip 5 is going to go back in the bag because I don't need it for now. Okay. Now, there's no cutting diagram for this, so it's going to go up against my seam allowance here. And I'm going to go ahead and move my, strip number to the end of my piece. Now, when I get to the point, and it's going to be further on in the month, but when I get to the point where I'm running out of any of this fabric, that's when I'm going to go back to my cutting board with my bulk fabrics, and I'm going to cut more, okay? I'm only going to keep one of each strip in the bag at a time. I don't want to overload my bags and have trouble picking them up, have trouble going through them, have trouble sorting them. I don't want to be struggling with this quilt, okay? It's already enough to be sitting here going through, pulling data, and going back and forth, okay? You don't want to make yourself any more challenges than you really need, okay? So let me grab my strip 4, and I'm going to lay it this direction because I've got my selvage and I want it to fall outside of this area. So I'm going to line it up, and I'm going to fold that back so I'm ready to go sew. Now you are doing the same basic process if you're sewing through your paper. Make sure your stitch allowance or your seam allowance, your stitch length. Yes, I'm getting ahead of myself in case you wonder. I do that from time to time. Make sure your stitch length every time you sit down to work on this particular project is the same all the way until you get to the arcs. When you get to the arcs, you can use your regular seam allowance or your regular stitch length. I can't talk, guys. I can't talk. All right. So now that I've sewn that seam, I'm going to come in here just like I have for the other two, for all the other pieces. I'm going to trim my extra threads. Okay. I'm going to fold this out and cover my freezer paper, and it's going to cover the entire template. These are bright, you guys. Chloe says, my husband just went out to buy me a binder for the pattern. Yes, fantastic. Do you know I had to send mine to go get sheet protectors? That's what mine had to go get. Mine had to go get sheet protectors. Yeah, this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. It really is. All right. So now, look at there. We have 1 through 4. Okay, so I'm going to take and I'm going to rough cut out around all of this. And I'm going to go ahead and cut on the line that I traced. So now, at least for this half of it, it's going to match the outside edge of my sewing guide. Okay, this is about the time you can do it. Alright, so this is my leftover strip, and the strip label is at the other end, as you can see. I am going to cut this extra section down here as well, but I'm only going to cut it up to about here. I'm not going to cut it all the way to where I'm going to stitch again. And this is just a one-time cut. When I go to do this freezer paper pattern again, then I might have to trim that one. But this first one, as long as it's still going to be sticky and work, then we're good to go. Okay? Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and fold my fabric back up. And it is going back in the bag. I'm not even going to look ahead and see if it is the right fabric for piece 5. Because that's not where I'm going to go with it, okay? I'm not going to do that to myself. I'm going to keep everything in order, so my fabric is back in my bag, okay? So, now that we've got this is day 1, this is January 1st. So if this is all you're doing, is you're doing one day at a time, then you would save this for tomorrow. And this would be the piece that you start with tomorrow. Now, here's the other thing. This is why I went over the arc numbers earlier. If I write an arc number on the back of this, what's going to happen when I pull this off and, you know, like I've got all 8 values stitched here, and then I pull this off, I'm going to lose my values. I'm going to lose my information. So, there are, and this is what's going in my other sheet protector that's going to go in my box. Okay? There are labels. There's tons of labels, okay? And they are just paper. You can print them out on whatever you want to print them out on. But I did not feel like everybody wanted them printed like huge or big size. So I went ahead and went small size. Okay? So this is going to be arc 30. So I'm going to go ahead and find arc 30. And here's arc 30. Okay? There's arc 30. Okay? Now, you can magic clip this to arc 30, or you can magic clip arc 30 to this, and then when you pull the freezer paper off, just make sure that it stays with your fabric. You can take a pin, which is what I'm going to do for now, at least. I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to pin through just my blue, because I can pull that up and it will not affect the rest of the arc that much. And these are glass ball head pens, so I can iron over them. If you want to use magic pens that are also heat resistant, you can do that too. Alright, so that is reattached to my freezer paper. So now it is labeled ARC 30. So there's no way I'm going to start losing this very quickly. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead now, because I'm ready to go ahead and do January 2nd, because I have the data. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this between the lines between 1 and 5. Okay, so 1 and 5. I'm going to go ahead and fold that. I'm going to go ahead and grab my cutting mat. And if you have a way to set this up where you can leave this up throughout the year, that will absolutely benefit you. But if you don't, you really don't need a huge cutting mat. I mean, you don't need anything big or fancy or whatever. Alright, now this is big enough to use for my scrap for my color charts. So I could go find the fabric that this is and go put it in the bag. And that's what I will do as I go through this, okay? So it will go back in the bag before I clean up for today. Alright, so value, alright, so mine are rotating. I mean, I got a piece of black thread stuck there. Alright. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and 4 was red, orange, green, and blue. My value 5, according to my color chart, is blue. So I am going to be rotating this in, okay? So my value for January 2nd, because now we're on January 2nd, and you know what? I'm going to check off January 1st. That way I know I've done it. Okay, January 2nd, my low temperature is 16, which actually falls in a different fabric. Oh no, I take that back. 16 falls in the same fabric, F26. So I'm going back to that same fabric. But now I am working with strip 5. So if you guys remember, I just sewed with strip 4. Okay. Now I'm going to pull out strip 5. So strip 4 is going to go back in the bag, and I'm not going to deal with it for right now. That is as simple as it gets. There's no need for me to do much with it. Alright, so strip 5 does have a trim template. And again, like we found out with strip 3 trim template, it's going to go on the wrong side of my fabric. Alright, so my strip 5 is clipped, so I can find where strip 5 is in the future. And we're going to come up here. Let me grab my trim template. And because I'm using freezer paper, now this fabric was trimmed second, so this fabric is trimmed more accurately to size. So I can line up the edges of my trace fairly roughly, and it's going to line up on the fabric. Okay, so the other fabric that I was using, I don't necessarily need that big of a piece, but it's what I cut. Okay, so it's on the wrong side of my fabric, and here we're going to go, and we are going to trim along that angle. And do I probably need extra scrap in that bag? No, but am I going to keep it? Yes. It does not hurt you at all to keep your scraps until you are ready and sure that you are done. If you want to put a separate bag for your fabric scraps for each fabric, you can do that. I did run into a problem when doing this quilt. I actually ran out of one of my fabrics because I didn't have a full yard of my fabric. So, with that being said, if you want to avoid having the problem of not being able to find the fabric or whatever, you could always franken piece your fabric and make your own piece. So it is not out of the realm of possibilities. Alright, so let me grab my arc. Alright, so here's my arc, and here's where this piece is going to go. So this piece is trimmed so that when you go to flip it over, it is covering that section. Now I am going to move it up just a little bit. The sewing guide is large, okay? Don't panic if you have a little bit that is not covering your sewing guide, okay? You may have a little bit here and there that does not cover your sewing guide. That is okay. You want to just cover as much of it as you can. Alright, so I've got this lined up that when I fold it over, I'm not seeing those, and it is covering it at 1/4 of an inch or larger. Okay, so I'm going to pick this up, fold my fabric, or fold my freezer paper back, and I'm going to sew right against my freezer paper. Is it more fun now that we're in the sewing part, you guys? Make sure to give me a like or thumbs up if you haven't already. YouTube really does hinge a lot on interaction. So if you guys are able to give a like or thumbs up, that really does help the channel out, and it helps this video so other people can find it easier as well. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and trim my extra threads off. You guys have seen me do that a couple times now, so I'm not going to hang on to them. And you can sew as close as you want. I do not want any thread nests on this quilt, so I'm not worried about getting super close. All right, so when you look at this initially, it looks so crazy, but when you fold this template out, it is exactly covering the spot that it needs to cover. Okay, so I'm going to flip this over and press it down. That way it adheres to my freezer paper. And you can reuse this freezer paper until it is no longer sticky. Okay, so don't use steam with it, because you want it to stay sticky as long as possible. All right, so now our next piece is between 5 and 6. Now, if you are sewing on paper, I advise leaving it in until right before you trim it to size. Don't try to rip your paper out. So my freezer paper will get reused for January 3rd and 4th. So it's not going to stay with me long term, but the freezer paper's not going to stay with this arc for long term. That's why I wanted to go ahead and mark it. And again, I'm going to rough cut the extra fabric away, so I'm not sitting here fumbling with it. Then I'm also going to put the strip away. I want this to be part of your habit, okay? I know it sounds crazy. Put your strips away as you go. Put your strips away. And I'm actually going to pick up all of my blues, because I am done with blue for January 1st and 2nd. And they are going to go back in my bucket, okay? Along with my gobstoppers. I haven't had any in a while. I pulled them out today. Alright, so strip 6. So I'm going to look back at my color chart. Strip 6 is my wind speed for the day. So wind speed for January 2nd was 25. So that actually falls into the next fabric, which is F17. So my wind speed is going to be different. So we are going to find F17 and pull it out. Alright, and there's no fancy trimming for strip 6. Your fancy trimming for the sewing guide G is 3, 5, and 7. So we'll have a fancy trimming here in just a minute, but we're not there yet. Not there yet. Alright, and this one is F17 if I'm not mistaken. Make sure I have the right one. Yes, I do. F17, marking my bag as I go. That's how I know I've cut into them. That's another thing, because I'm just doing that so I know I've cut into it. Alright, so here's my green for this one. And so you can choose whatever end you're going to start at, as long as you are going to, be sewing along a straight line. Or you're not going to be sewing the selvage in. That's the key, is you don't want to sew the selvage in place. Alright. Alright, so we've got that, and that is trimmed away. So now we have a straight edge the whole length of this piece. And where's my strip? There's my strip. Alright, so I'm going to flip it over just so I can see where I want it. And I'm going to put it right about there. And oh yeah, I can actually move it down. I'm going to move it down just a little bit because I see my edge of my sewing guide is here. So I can go all the way to there for my selvage. So I don't want to sew my selvage into my project, but it's fine if it's on the edge of that sewing guide. Okay, so I'm going to fold over and we're going to sew. Now, how many of you have done freezer paper piecing before? Or what methods are you going to use for doing your paper piecing for this project? I think everybody's deep in thought. Everybody's deep in thought. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and trim my threads, get them gone. Alright. And we will figure out a way for me to make this easier to understand in the future too. I've done it before, but not this time. Okay. Hey, that's perfectly fine. I'm excited to see how those dryer sheets do, because I've never done it that way. That will be a new experience for me. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and press this down. I have not done a full project with freezer paper. The quilt behind me, the sample quilt, was done with printer paper. I just didn't want to do printer paper again. I wanted to give my fingers a break from pulling out all that paper. Alright, so here's where the fold is between 6 and 7. And I'm not going to worry about trimming off the extra because that will come in time. And 7 is going to need a special trim template. So we're going to pull the trim template out too in just a second. Alright. There we go. Now if you want to trim off the extra up there, you can. I'm just not going to worry about it. And again, I am pulling my thread out of my strip, but I'm not worried about this dog ear edge. If that bothers you so much, you absolutely can trim that off. It's not going to bother me because it will get trimmed off at one point or another, and this is not in the finished quilt, so it's not going to show up. Alright, so F17 is back in the bag, and all of my greens, because I'm done with greens for this strip, are going to go back, or this arc, are going back in there. Alright, so strip 7, according to my color chart, is my hours of daylight. And I had 545 minutes of daylight. So that falls in the first fabric again. So we're doing the same fabric we did earlier of F08. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that one out. Let's see, Terry says, have never done paper piecing, just observing and learning. Absolutely. Glad you are along for the ride. Glad you are along for it. Alright. So here's one thing I'm going to show you guys. So strip 3 needed a special trim, but strip 2 didn't. Okay? This is a strip 2 fabric, or this was a strip 2. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take strip 7 trim template, and it goes on the wrong side of our fabric. Alright, there we go. Alright, so this is my strip 7 trim template. If, when I came to put this down on here, I would have, let's say it's not going to go this way, okay? But let's say I had this big piece to trim off. You know what I would do instead? I'd go to the other end. I'd go to the other end of the strip and trim the other end of the strip, okay? There is no need to waste a whole lot of fabric just for a trim template. So don't do it. Alright, so now I've got my little dog ear down here because this strip is a little wider than normal. It's wider than what I needed. So I may not have this on every strip, but I do have it on this one. So I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it one bit. I'm going to line up, and I drew this kind of wonky, so I'm going to cut it, where it should be, where it should fall. Okay. And that might be big enough for my, yep, that is actually big enough for my color chart. So I'm going to hang on to that scrap. Where did my bag go? I put my, oh, there's my bag. Gotta find my bag, guys. Gotta find my bag. Alright. So, I'm going to take the trim template off, because I don't need that now. Not until next time. Not until January 4th. Okay. And we're going to take it, and we're going to lay that cut edge up against our seam allowance. And so when we sew it, it's going to come over, and it's not going to give us a straight edge here. It's going to give us that bias that we want. So I'm going to fold it back, and we're going to go sew. So I will not sew a whole lot of these off camera, you guys. I will sew as many of them on camera as I can. So there will be a lot of video footage, a lot of repeats of everything that I'm doing, all of this paper piecing. There's going to be a lot of that on the videos. So I don't want you to think that this is the only time you're ever going to see this. But one thing that I have learned is that the more times I see something, the more likely I can repeat it. So that's what we're going to do. The more times you guys see it, the easier it should be for you guys to repeat it and to be able to do it with yourself, with your own copy of temperature rings. So it should make it a lot easier. This black thread is sticking to my hands, you guys. It is attached. It loves me. It loves me. Chloe says that she's glad. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not gonna make you guys try to figure this out on your own. That's not fair. That is not fair. I lived with this quilt for a year while I was working on designing it and being able to write the pattern and figuring out how to write the pattern for it. So no, I'm not expecting anybody to figure that out on their own. That's not fair. That's not fair. Alright. So I've got piece 7 in place. So we have one more piece to go, guys. That is it. That is it. And this piece will be done. And I'm going to go ahead and rough cut this away. If you were ever worried about, rough cutting and not getting, or, getting too close or something, don't do it then. Just leave this extra strip in place. Just make sure you have it marked. You want to have your strip marked so you don't lose it. Alright, so strip 8 on mine is going to be high temperatures again. So that high temperature for January 2nd was 40 degrees. And that falls into FO4, which is the same fabric I used before. You guys will start to see that the fabrics will start changing the more the temperature warms up or cools down. You'll see a lot of that. Alright, so before we cut into strip 1. There's strip 1, but now I need strip 8. They are cut a different size. Now this one's like way bigger because it was the first strip cut and I didn't need it to be that big. But I definitely needed this one this size. So I'm going to go ahead and move my label so that way it is at one end of my strip and I have a strip end free to work with. Alright, so strip 8 doesn't need any special templates. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our freezer paper that apparently didn't stick very well to my orange, but we'll live with it. And we are going to go ahead and come trim. And this is why I said the 6-inch at a quarter plus would be more than enough. Now, the reason for the plus is to help you fold this paper easier. If I had not taken and scored my paper with my needle, like if I had not pre-stitched my lines, if I printed them, then what I would want to do is I would want to take my at a quarter and put the shiny side up. So this is my lip edge. That's that lip edge that you're putting up against your fabric. You're going to want to line it up against your line and then fold your paper. Okay, so that puts the bezel easier for you to fold against. So don't try to do it this way. Don't put it where the lip edge is here and where you have to hold this down and then fold it. It's too much work on your hands. Make your hands work easier. Don't stress your hands. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and flip this over, and I'm going to take the end of my strip and I'm going to line it up so that I know that my selvage is at least outside of the edge of my sewing line, my outside of my template. Again, this template is large, so you're not in danger of being short on fabric when you go to trim this up later. Okay, you are not in danger at all. So there is also a freezer paper way to trim all of your pieces if you are not using an AccuQuilt. And it's the same way that I did the strip trim templates, where you trace it onto your freezer paper or print it onto your freezer paper, or iron your freezer paper onto your template piece, your sewing template or your sewing guide, and then you use scissors to cut it out. You can use a rotary cutter if you're comfortable doing that, but you are going to need the notches, and it's really easy to accidentally cut those notches. Especially if you're using this size. Alright, so now we have, this looks almost like primary colors, you guys. This is not what I was hoping for. Oh, it's not what I was hoping for at all. But it's going to be bright. It's definitely going to be bright, and it's going to be different, and it might just be exactly what somebody is looking for, and so I'll take it. Alright, so now I've got all of that on there, so now I can come back, and I'm going to take my scissors, and I am going to rough cut the edges following my outside lines of my sewing guide. Okay, so you can cut right on that line for the outside edge of your sewing guide if you want to, or you can cut even further outside of that. It is entirely up to you and your personal preference. I know that I'm not going to need that much fabric. I'm not going to need that much extra, so I am absolutely okay with cutting a little bit of extra off, and it's not going to bother me one bit. Alright, and if you do put a pin in to pin your arc number, please make sure you don't cut into your pin. Do not damage your scissors by cutting into your pin. Okay, so now this green piece here is big enough that I can probably cut something out of it. So I will find the fabric that it goes with, and I will put it in its bag. Same with this red. It is big enough that I can probably, use it for a color chart or something. I can use it for something. So I will put it in the bag. Lydia says, yes, making more sense now that you're sewing it together. Awesome! Yay! See, that's what I was hoping for. That's exactly what I was hoping for. I want it to make as much sense as humanly possible. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. Here, we're not done yet. Please do not go away just yet. We have a little bit more that I want to make sure that I cover, okay? So, alright, let me move my iron. I do not need my iron for any of the rest of this. And I am so worried about knocking it off my table or burning one of my sheet protectors, because that would totally be me. Totally be me. All right, so I'm going to go find, all right, here's bag M1, okay? I have not put a center in there yet, but I already know that all of my centers are black. So, you know, by the next time you see this project, you guys, all my centers will be in my bags, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and put my center in my bag for M1. I'm also going to mark off January 2nd because I've done January 2nd now. Okay. All right, so my center is in here. Every bag is going to have a center. Not every bag is going to have everything else, but every bag will at least have a center, okay? So, let me move my cutting stuff out of the way. All right, so I have my center in my bag. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I already know that I'm working on M1. And M1 for me is January. So I pulled out this sheet earlier. This is the block layout. The colors are bright. Yes, they are so insanely bright. Absolutely crazy bright. Not what I was expecting at all. I mean, I knew they would be bright, but not that bright. Not primary color bright. It is not the colors I was thinking of. So this is your cue. Go color your layout sheet. Please. Go color your layout sheet and make it match the fabrics that you're using so that you have a better idea of what it's going to look like, okay? All right. So I'm going to look for M1 on my block layouts. All right, so M1 is this right here, okay? There's another little section here attached to M7. We're not going to deal with that right now, okay? So M1 has arc 30, okay? Arc 30. So I'm going to go ahead, since I am done with it, I am done with arc 30, done with piecing it, I'm going to take it off my freezer paper. Okay, so now I have this for using again tomorrow on my next day that I'm working on, okay? I do have some of my peels, my Q numbers, I do have some of those cut out. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. I do already have those. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those out. 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? If it matters where they go, make sure you label them. There are labels included in your pattern. Go cut them out, please. Pin them to it. You know, use as many pins as you need to, okay? I don't need to because all of mine are the same, all right? Now I've got setting squares. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and pull out 8 setting squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. So these are my setting squares, you guys. This purple. It's going to match perfectly. I'm just going to say. And I don't want to pull that one back out of the bag. So I'm going to pull another one to show you guys what this is going to start looking like. Okay. Gosh, these are bright. They're so bright. Okay. There's that. Okay, so I'm going to have an arc down here. I'm going to have setting squares to set that arc. Okay. I'm going to have an arc up here. And then I'll have an arc on the other side as well. Okay. So this is M1. I really can't zoom out very well for it. Let me back up just a hair. There we go. Okay. So this is month 1, M1. So this is the first. Are the setting squares the same is the 4 patches in the quilt behind you. Yes, yes. So these 2 right here are these 2 right here. This blue and brown that's right here, that's what's purple here. Okay. These 2 right here are blue and brown up here. This arc is this arc right here. Okay. So 30 is going to be your starting number. 31 is going to be here. So when I do January 4th, 3rd and 4th, it's going to be up here. January 5th and 6th will be arc 32. And January 7th and 8th is going to be arc 33. Then 34 is here. 35, 36, 37. So your setting squares are going to fall into here. Now, I am doing 1 fabric setting squares, and I'm doing an applique method. So this quilt was paper pieced, and I absolutely could do these letters again. I will do them again for you guys. So I want you to see, because you're going to need probably help with S and B. S and B are going to be your 2 more challenging letters. So I will do them again, but I'm not doing paper piecing letters for this quilt. So if you guys can tell just from these colors, this is going to be incredibly bright and bold, and then this purple is going to be kind of a calming effect. So what's going to happen if I do partial arcs, if I do a half arc and I do it in my black, it's going to, I'm going to use these to cover it up so you guys can see. It's going to look like that. So that's what my half arc is going to look like. So I'm going to have 4 variables, and then if I do black, it's going to really fill in right there. And it's going to be obvious that that's the end of a month. So it's entirely up to you. This is fully customizable to whatever you want to see in your quilt. All right, so I pulled out 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I've got 8 setting squares. I've got 4 Q pieces, 4 peels. My center is already in there. And now I have arc 30. So all I need to do is keep adding my pieces that go into this bag. And there is a printout option if you want to print it out. Let me see what it's called, because I labeled everything. The bag workbook. If you have the bag workbook, you can mark off each of these pieces as you go. So the football unit top is arc 1, Q1, SS2, arc 31, and SS9. Okay. The unit bottom is arc 33, Q8. And when we start putting these football pieces together, I'm going to walk you through exactly how these are going to work. So I need to have, and it's going to be when I get to next month, because I'm not going to piece these yet to the outdoor arcs, because those are going to be a solid fabric and I haven't decided on that fabric yet. So you guys are not going to see it for M1 until I get to the other side of M1, okay? And then when I get to the bottom of M1. So you guys are going to start seeing those start to come together. And I'm going to show you the process for all of those. And that bag workbook is going to play a key role in how you put them together, so you never have to question if you got it right, okay? You're not going to have to go back and figure out, did you get it right? It's all going to be taken care of for you. All right, so now I've got my Q pieces. I've got my arc 30. I don't have my outside arcs yet, so I don't have those. And I've got my setting squares. So, you know, I could check off the pieces and parts that I have, so that, you know, I have those marked as to I've got them done. Okay? So it is going to be literally just piecing a section, putting it in the bag, keeping everything marked, and then trimming these as I go. You can trim them now. I'm going to trim mine when I have 1 block worth. I'm going to pull my cutter out and cut that to the correct size. So you guys will get to see that too. I'm not going to leave anything out. You guys are going to get to see the whole process. So I'm going to call it a day. I have to be somewhere in an hour. So I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to put this back in my box, my bucket. And I'm going to go ahead and put I'm going to put all of this back together real quick while I'm closing up for the day. So my setting squares and my peels, because I've got all of that cut, and they're all the same colors, like I'm using the same colors all the way through, there is no requirement for me to put them all in the bags if I don't want to. Or I could go ahead and put them all in the bags right now and be done. It is entirely up to you as to which process works better for you. But it will all fit, or should all fit, in this one bucket the whole time. So again, my data sheets, my color chart, which I'm going to start filling in. I've got to find my glue. And I'm also going to put my labels and my strip trim templates as well in sheet protectors. Okay, so my 4 variable color sheet is going in one, and it's just going to sit in there because I'm going to keep pulling it out as I go. There's no need for me to put it back in the book. There's no need for me to tuck it away. There's just no need. There's just no need. So, do you guys have any questions? We got 12 viewers watching. 12 viewers watching, you guys. Do you have any questions? Do not forget, tomorrow night is After Sunset Sunday. I do have a project I'm going to pull back out. I think you guys will be really thrilled to see it. I've made a little bit of progress on it. I think you'll be happy. I think you'll be happy. I've actually got a couple of projects that I've made some progress on. So you guys get to start seeing me pull out some older projects that, well, they're not older as in they're old, but they're older as in I haven't finished them yet. You guys will get to start seeing me pull that out. Chloe says, no more questions. Thank you. You're very welcome. You're very, very welcome. All right. So yeah, my strip trim templates. I'm going to put my extra templates page also in here. So I have it hanging out for me. So I have everything that I need ready and able to go. Katie says, been watching on the TV, so can't comment when I do that, but it looked like fun. Oh, thank you, Katie. She says, y'all hit that thumbs up like button too. Yes, thank you. Andrea says, I'm going to watch replay and try to digest this with captions so I can understand it all. Thanks so much, Tammy. Absolutely, Andrea. And if you get stuck at any point, don't get yourself frustrated, okay? It is my job, not yours, my job, to be the one frustrated, okay? So if you have something that you get stuck at with this pattern, please email me. Just send me a quick email. I will respond to it as soon as I can. While I'm thinking about it, Katie, do you have time tomorrow? And we'll take care of what we were discussing before. If you're not, it will have to be. I'll have to check my schedule. It's not been intentional back burner, but it has been back burner a little bit. So let me know if you've got time tomorrow. Send me an email if you've got time tomorrow, and that's what we're going to work with. And Joyce, if you are watching replay, I am about to go dig templates, and I will put it in the community tab. So you can find it on the community tab at YouTube. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it so very much. I know this is a lot to digest. I know it's a lot of information. We've been running for 3 hours, guys. I was thinking this might take an hour. I think it will in the future, but this definitely was kind of a necessity. So please let me know if you have questions. If you're watching this after the live, you're watching replay, please hit that like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notifications buttons as well. And leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. If something's not processing, or you have questions, or you want to know a little bit more before you hit that buy button for the pattern, I'm more than happy to help you guys. So thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and get off of here.